first thing you should do as you rise up is count your blessings. Cause every new day under the sky is a blessing. Yeah. And you're surely blessed if you have life, ain't no guessing. Yo, I want you hear me like the radio. Want you see what I'm saying like a video.
All right, everybody, so welcome back. So we are continuing our discussion on the state of affairs in Trinidad and Tobago, and now we are joined by a former president of the Senate. It's also a gentleman who has acted in the post of president of the Republic. He's an attorney at law. We do have on the line this morning the political leader of Hope, Timothy Hamel-Smith. Mr. Hamel-Smith, thank you very much for joining us this morning, and Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you, Marlan, and to all your viewers.
Yeah.
Thanks very much for having me on your show.
Yes, thank you very much again for joining us this morning. Well, Mr. Hamel-Smith, I suspect you and everyone else, you do know the state of affairs in Trinidad and Tobago. Of course, we ended the year, I believe it's 624 murders for 2024. You do have a state of emergency right now. An attorney at law was killed on New Year's Eve. I believe we have one murder for the year. So this is the environment that we are operating in at this time. As a political leader of Hope, what's your perspective?
Well, certainly it's a very worrying moment, I think, for most people, particularly with the murder of a prosecutor. You know, it sends a signal. Who else is in danger? You know, our judges in danger, our witnesses are in danger. If in fact, you know, gangs or defendants in matters are reaching out in order to isolate themselves and protect themselves from the law, as it were. And that is a very worrying signal. I imagine a lot of people today who perhaps are in positions, that sort of position, whether you're a prosecutor, a witness, a member of a jury, a judge, you know, is that now, you know, the target, as it were, for criminals? And therefore, you know, it's at very different levels. You know, was he being protected at all? We're in the middle of a state of emergency, and these matters occur. So it makes it, you know, worse, you know, than perhaps one might ordinarily. Bad as it is, it's even worse because it occurred during the state of emergency, when, you know, this related to a matter that triggered the very state of emergency we have. And was there a failure to protect people or is there an ongoing failure? Have we remedied that to protect those who are perhaps vulnerable in these kinds of situations? So that sends a very worrying signal for the population at all, you know, at large.
Yeah.
When it goes beyond, you know, reprisal, this is into the very heart of the judicial system, as it were.
Yeah. So that's my question. How do you restore that confidence in the judicial system? I don't know if you would have seen the Daily Express today. Prosecutors run scared. I'm also seeing where the Law Association of Trinidad and Tobago is calling for the urgent implementation of additional security measures for prosecutors and judicial officers. So again, how do you restore that confidence?
First of all, I mean, I would like to extend my condolences to his wife and his family. And yes, a whole range of people beyond PPPs, you know, beyond prosecutors, can be now at risk. And one would have thought that the police, you know, the commissioner of police would have immediately announced measures that have been taken. We don't want to know the intimate details, but certainly if I was in that range of persons, and anybody could come within the range, you know, people like yourself, people like I would decide to talk in relation to matters that are about the prosecution, about the state of emergency. Will they be targets, you know? And that is, it means that the freedom of speech becomes, impeded right in the middle of a state of emergency. It is certainly something to be worried about. And I would think there needs to be a public announcement coming from ministers, coming from the Commissioner of Police, indicating that they have matters in hand, under control, and we are there to protect and serve, not just in word, but in deed, and action is actually taken so people feel more secure.
So you don't believe that, how would I put it? Let me put it this way. You believe that this matter should be given the seriousness that it deserves?
It absolutely should. And one would have thought by now, I haven't seen any public announcement being made. So that, all right, something may have taken you by surprise. That's possible. But in a state of emergency, in fact, you would think that the police would have taken precautions in many different arenas. This didn't happen, this happened as an incident after church services. A man is walking with his family to his car. This didn't happen because that's just off of Savannah. This didn't happen in some area where you say, well, if you go into X area, you can expect to have more protection, or you become more exposed. In this instance, you are doing something that all of us, members of the general public, could be associated with without the expectation that we were under any threat. And now, I think that's a game changer in terms of exposure of all of us.
What would happen, Mr. Hamel-Smith, if prosecutors believe that their lives are now at risk and they decide, look, we're not going to work anymore. We are going to pull out of certain matters. How does that impact on the work of the judiciary?
Well, I would hope that will not be the case. I would hope that the state will reach out and give them the affirmation that they have it under control, they will be guarded, they will be protected, and in certain matters, that in fact further protection will be extended to them. One wonders in matters like this if in fact the burden of proof should alter to put upon the defendant an obligation to demonstrate they have nothing to do with a murder that is so connected with an ongoing trial. There are things like that that one needs to be looking at. If we do not do that, we descend into a very dark territory, because this is not just for today. This is an instance which is sending a warning signal across the bows of the ship of state that all of us, and particularly those connected with any matters, you then get the potential for the crumbling of justice in Trinidad and Tobago, which is worrisome as that. Not only for this moment, for an ongoing matter. And if it could happen, as I say, in a state of emergency, what else lies in wait for Trinidad and Tobago and those who perhaps are part of the criminal justice system?
Yeah. Are you optimistic at all about this state of emergency? Of course, history would tell us that in the past, during other states of emergency, there have been challenges, there have been problems. Yesterday I was having a conversation and that person was telling me, well, it's all about the management, how well this is managed. You feel that we have learned from the past mistakes that we would have made? What do you expect from this SOE?
Sure. In fact, the signals that are already being sent is here a state of emergency is a one-time effort. It can't be an ongoing state of emergency. So you make a one-time effort, and therefore you should put all your resources at turning around the problem that we face. And I am a little alarmed. I don't know what has actually happened, but you ought to prepare for a state of emergency. This is not should not be a knee-jerk reaction. Something happens and it triggers. I mean, surely our security forces ought to be in touch. There ought to be espionage efforts to ensure that at the date you proclaim the state of emergency, you can take the enemy, as it were, by surprise. That is the one great advantage the state had in entering into a state of emergency, because you could have prepared. Presumably, they know where there are caches of arms, where gang leaders hang out. All of these things should have been explored, and you would have thought that the moment that proclamation was read, that there would be a swarm of activity into these places, because firearms, as we know it, is the real common denominator in all of this. Yes, firearms, and therefore firearms coming into the country, firearms getting into the hands of gangs, executions occurring. It's all with high-powered firearms. I think it's been suggested, I think, by the Prime Minister that the level of artillery are weapons of war. And that's what we face. So was that done? Was, in fact, the state which decided to proclaim a state of emergency, was it itself ready to implement the measures that should be taken? Or did they lose the element of surprise? In other words, it meant that the criminals out there were alerted that we're coming after you. That shouldn't be the case. Mm-hmm. You should be the one, when you look at Sun Tzu, The Art of War, one of the advantages you have, and you must create for yourself, is the fact that you have that weapon, as it were, in which you are prepared, but you take the enemy by surprise. My suspicions are, looking on, and I can't speak with certainty about this, but that the criminals would have had just as much prior information about the state of emergency as the very police force that were there to have oversight and take charge of the situation.
Yes.
And what we've alerted the criminal enterprise, the gangs, to do is take cover. I mean, if that happened, that is an absurd notion. If you go into a state of emergency and lose that weapon of surprise.
Yes. Mr. Hamel-Smith, I just have about 1 minute again. Anything else you'd like to place on the table this morning?
Yes, so it is alarming. I think this trend that we see is alarming. I think there needs to be announcements where the public fears are allayed and action is actually seen to be taken to protect all the people within the criminal justice system. Prosecutors, witnesses, judges, juries. When this happens, all are at stake. And I think that, the state needs to come out, the police, the commissioner of police needs to come out and give us some sort of comfort. And you would have thought it would have happened already, but it's never too late to step up your game and ensure that this state of emergency doesn't go to waste, as it were. Because you only get this one opportunity to reach in and put this, and as one of the things I mentioned, of course, is you would think that we need a gun court sitting 24 hours a day, because firearms are really at the heart of what we're talking about.
Yes.
Yet we see firearms, but nobody's ever, held in possession of the firearm. And that sounds very strange to me.
Yes, Mr. Hamel-Smith, unfortunately, we have run out of time, but thank you very much for speaking with us this morning. Again, Happy New Year, and it's an election year, Mr. Hamel-Smith, so I'm sure that we'll be having some more conversations throughout the year. Bye for now, sir.
Thanks very much for having me, Marlan, and Happy New Year to all your viewers. And yes, we wish you well, even in this hour of darkness. Perhaps the light shows more brightly in the middle of darkness. Yes. We must keep up our hope, as it were, for
now, tomorrow. All right, everybody, we are going to a very short break. We are coming back.